Hi everyone, it's Jerry. I'm going to kibitz a game on the ICC right here between these guys. Endless Fighter 24-47. These are 5-minute. This is on the 5-minute auto pairing. Two 2400s. Very good ratings for this pool. And, well, how to assess this exactly? This pawn is passed. White does not have so great of control over the square directly in front of it. Eventually, f4 is just going to be necessary to allow this bishop to c. Where would this knight like to be? I'm not so sure. I guess maybe white could set up a blockade on d3, and then this pawn won't be able to go any further. I see some drawback in maybe pushing this pawn in that the bishop will be able to see more of these squares. So these pawns being doubled, this pawn being passed, right now pressure on b2. I guess just throw this knight back to the d3 square. I think b4 would be met immediately with just a5, and then I don't think that the b4 pawn could be maintained. So knight d3 is conveniently placed to both blockade and defend b2. So the e file, I guess, not seeing any entry points along the e file. So no, okay, well now there's an issue. Both the rook and the knight are converging on e2, so maybe run the king away to h2, although that would leave the f2 square vulnerable. So this is a little bit, well, I thought maybe even knight here would have, no, not knight there. Actually, that's not avoiding that fork. So, okay, knight there would just allow fork. Rook there is avoiding it, and now this knight is being hit. So this is an interference move, and it's also putting pressure on this point. So two things going on. The pawn is now hit twice. The knight is hit once. The knight is also still defending against e2. So this is a good move here. Where does the knight go? Knight here might be best. Knight back to e6, and then if knight takes, pawn takes, and then this pawn will be defended. What else would there be? Oh, okay. I thought knight to e6. Okay, but instead, knight is going after this a pawn. This pawn is going to fall now, is it not? Exchange of both the d pawn for the a pawn. Okay, queen d3 just to defend a3, and this is still on. And now black is in a completely defensive position here. Both knights are kind of stuck. How to make improvements for white, however. I was saying earlier about pushing f4, but that's not going to be a possibility now. There's not really a better square for this knight. Is queen, now queen right here is going to just run into something like knight e6. So okay, rerouting in this direction. Is it maybe looking to play to d3 to control this flight square? I'm not quite sure. Okay, maybe some clamping down type of move with h5. So a pair of knights are off the board. Queen d4 or rook to c7, rook c7. Okay, pressure on the 7th rank. b7, do you maintain the rook? I guess rook over here. Rook to e7, there we go. Dropping the queen back and then playing to d3. This pawn, you know, one of the drawbacks with playing f4 earlier is that it opens up the diagonal, but at the same time it allows the knight to jump in here. However, coming off on this diagonal, this pawn essentially boxes out the knight. So the queen is very active. This pawn is probably just going to fall unless we have rook to b3. A minute 10 for black, 1 minute 45 for team white. Still very tricky. There's not a great way to dislodge this knight. For as long as he stays here, this pawn is not going to be captured. But now, okay, now this pawn's or this knight's position is in question. It can't be so. Or I can't rely upon the f6 square so easily. g5 is on the cards. And where would its next home be? It would like to get to f5, but there's not a support point for it just yet. 50 seconds for Team Black. I'm not quite sure what to do here. I guess just, no, actually taking on a3 would be met with rook to b8. And then the queen would end up being lost. So that's why we didn't have that. So the knight is eyeing this f4 square. And, well, I don't know about this. If this knight could get in here, there's a lot of bad things that can happen very fast. But now this pawn is a giant thorn. Capturing just allows the queen to be incredibly annoying. Pressure on g7, the knight, f7, you name it. It's hitting in every direction possible. Less than 30 for black. Here we go. The knight is being hit. The queen is now defending the knight with that pawn push, and the queen could be giving some check, but I don't know what the follow-up would be. There's a pretty good communication between the black pieces. Queen guarding rook, rook guarding pawn, queen guarding knight, but now we have an interference move. What's wrong with just taking the rook? Oh, you can't take the rook. This is an interference move, and that's game over. Very nice. I forgot that this bishop was watching over that b5 square. Let me see if these guys are going to play. Well, this is the auto pairing, but I am following this endless fighter right now, and I will check out the next game that he plays. Okay, here we go. So now he's paired up against somebody who's a little bit higher rated, M8T. Not sure who this guy is. No, he's not really saying what kind of title. I would think that somebody of this rating has a title or is of a titled strength, like an FM or an IM. So, okay. This A6 variation and the A4 response. So of this Slav, I believe it's the Chebanenko. I'm not certain on that. So it's weakening the B4 square. That is one of the drawbacks with playing A4. Eventually we could be seeing this A5 move to just clamp down on this square. This bishop is still going to be an issue. Sometimes you could get it out by way of B6 and then just bishop to B7. He's not going to come out on this classic diagonal. So A5, sometimes I've played this position as black where I would, well, I do play that A6 move, and then after A4, I will play E6, and then much sooner I would play A5 while my knight was still on B8, so that I could pivot on A6 and then jump into this B4 square. We'll still end up having this B6, bishop B7, I would think. There's not really going to be a better way to get that bishop developed, but now we have the offering of dark square bishops, which I believe benefits white. This right here being the bad bishop for white, this is the good bishop, and this still remains an issue for black. How do you get this guy working? Is E5 going to be the break? Okay, if you're doing B6, then C6 becomes an issue, but now white is avoiding that exchange, allowing the doubled pawns in exchange for what? In exchange for control over E5, and now making it quite difficult for this bishop to get working. So a structural change, giving up the bishop pair, doubled pawns, and it's all, the compensation again is in the form of working against this guy here on C8, but he is now ready to come out with great effect. Bishop A6 with tempo, and I don't know, is this pawn really going to turn out to be an issue? The knight surely is going to be making use of E5 to put pressure on this point, but the rook here on C8, C5 I guess is going to be tried eventually. How else do you make improvements here? Knight takes knight is just allowing white to build the center, and there's not going to be any issue with watching over D4. Rook C8 comes to mind. Also, this move here, H6, so that maybe the bishop and queen are a bit more free to move off of this diagonal. Otherwise, knight to G5 could be a very annoying move, inducing this G6 advance. I'm not so sure you want to play G6. However, maybe it's not so bad since white does not have a dark square bishop around. A G6 defense in response to knight to G5 might not be so bad. So, okay, knight E5, pressure on C6. My first thought is just rook to C8. Do you really want to devote a queen or a rook to the defensive pawn? Probably the lesser of the two. And now, okay, the undoubling of the pawn, and it may seem a bit unnatural to do this since black is the side that has the bishop pair, and white is now welcoming this particular pawn exchange. In general, the more pawn exchanges is going to favor the side that has the bishop pair, but then again, this guy was doubled. And okay, black is now just giving that bishop back. Bishop takes, queen takes, or pawn takes? Pawn takes, well, yeah, pawn takes can run into what exactly? Okay, actually pawn takes, knight takes knight, bishop to D3, and then this pawn is lost. So that said, I think queen takes would be necessary. Again, if pawn takes bishop, we would have knight takes, pawn takes, and then bishop here, and then this pawn will drop. So I believe that's why we were having queen takes E there. And now how to make forward progress. taking, well, can this pawn be maintained is a big question. Okay, apparently white is thinking that it could not be maintained, and now this becomes an issue. Knight takes or bishop takes. Okay, we're having knight takes first. This file does open up. If we do have a capture here, okay, it's coming with the bishop. What's going on with just rook here? Okay, we would transfer into a very simplified endgame. We'd probably have queen takes e, and white would be the side that stands better for two reasons. Just having this pass pawn, this is doubled, and in this endgame position, white already has a flight square for the king. Not the best flight square since it's on a light square. Black, in the meantime, creating a flight square with g6 on a dark square, and eventually we could be seeing rook c2 moves, 2 minutes 25 seconds for white, well, really just about even for both sides. What else do you do to improve your position here? So the bishop backs up, I guess getting ready to just push this pawn one step forward, and the queen, I think, could take up a very nice residence on the d4 square. In fact, if we saw rook c2, I think d5 would be a good response, just having the queen watch over b2. Now this rook is very active, functioning both on a file and a rank. Pressure on d4. This pawn gets rolling right away. Queen d7, I think, would be met with just b3. b3 to hit the rook and defend the pawn. I don't know that there's any rush with continuing to just push this pawn. How do you dislodge the queen? We could end up in completely a rook ending. However, this pawn is just going to drop now, is it not? You can only defend it once more, and then it gets hit a third time, it's going to drop. So I think black is now going to be the better side. I'm not seeing a way around just this pawn falling. The only well, I think the other thing is that black will now end up not only picking that pawn back up, but will end up with the more active rook. However, no, we're going to have a rook check and the rook coming behind here on b8 to constrain this rook, to make this rook go on the defensive. So although black is up a pawn, it's white now who has the more active rook, but this is a big misstep. This turned out to be a very poor move. White missed that king f3 check, and this pawn is going to fall, but this is still maybe not the easiest endgame to convert. All rook and pawn endgames are drawn. Is that the case? We're going to see about that. So we're going to have a passed a pawn, 1 minute 15 seconds, and now this king is going to inch up in this direction. I like this a real lot, and okay, white has to do something about that. Do you keep this king out? The king might be needing to play here. Okay, keeping it out from that g4 square. And now this threat is persistent. You have to grab this pawn for sure. However, no, taking here would threaten mate, but you just push up one, and then these two pawns would be maintained. So you have to at least get rid of one of these two pawns. Those connected pass pawns are too valuable. You could deal with one, but two, not so much. How do you make improvement for black? This is going to be quite difficult. The rook coming back here to threaten f7. Might black be needing to just change gears and say, you know what, my king has to come back here first. Oh, we're having that. So one of these guys is now going to fall. Eventually we'll need to see h6. I don't think that there's a way to improve. You grab one of these pawns, you come back here, and this king just can't get active. Not really seeing a great way for it to get active. The only other pawn break would come in the form of h6 and g5. So this pawn push, well, you can't push. You have to do either king h6 or pawn h6. King h6 is played. Rook getting behind the pass pawn. That is the ideal placement for the white rook in this position. Is this a possibility? No. I think you just hold tight right here, keeping this rook coming back and forth. No, okay, we are having h5. Just to do what exactly? Just to break up this pawn structure. King takes would be a helpmate. King takes pawn. It's a nice checkmate. So now more exchanges are going to happen. H takes G, and, well, what do you do? If you move the king up, that gives an opportunity for the king to sneak into this square, but now we have the king getting ready to make use of this f3 square should king h5 be played. Less than 30 seconds. 27 for black, or excuse me, 30 seconds for black, 25 for white. Check, king h5, and I'm not really seeing a great way to make progress. Okay, if pawn pushes, we're not really going to have anything. I think the rook does well to just immediately get behind this pawn. This is, I'm not sure how to make sense of this. Less than 20. Do you come right behind this rook right away? So the rook right here, black is looking to defend laterally and then bring the king up to this square. So I think something was clearly misplayed here for team white. Now this king, by having a lateral defense of this pawn, it allows the king to just sneak up to this square and then push this pawn away. But we're going to have, more than anything, a rat race here, a mouse race. So the rook is going to have to give itself up, and this is definitely a one position for team black. This king is going to just sneak over. 0.6 seconds, however. 0.6 seconds, and what's the situation with the clock? Actually, we have M8T resigning that game. All right, so Mr. Endless Fighter won yet again. So that's all the kibitzing I'm going to do for right now. And as always, I hope you got something out of it. Take care. Bye.